All right, let's move on to SCOTUS here. So, Ryan, I'm really curious what you think of this. The Supreme Court is officially hearing the student loan debt relief case. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. It says a decent summary of what the arguments for and against are. So if we will return to what the actual plan was, $10,000 in federal student loan debt is getting canceled for those making less than $125,000 or households with less than $250,000 in income. Pell Grant recipients who receive more financial need would get an additional $10,000 in debt forgiven. College students would qualify if their loans were disbursed before July 1st of 2022. That made some 43 million people eligible for the plan. The White House has said already that 26 million have applied for the relief and 16 million had already had relief approved. Congressional Budget Office said it would cost about $400 billion over 30 years. However, the problem is that the current case before the court involves a student named Myra Brown, ineligible for debt relief because her loans are commercially held, and an additional student, his name is Alexander Taylor, who is eligible for just $10,000, not the full $20,000 because he didn't receive a Pell Grant. They say the Biden administration did not go through the proper process in enacting this plan. A Texas judge actually ruled on behalf of the students, ruled to block the program. He said that the Biden admin did not have clear authorization from Congress to implement the program. Now, this goes to what the Biden administration actually did. They used something called the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act was passed after September 11, 2001, which said that you were going to, initially it was passed to keep service members from being worse off financially when they fought in wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Reasonable. Now, though, it allows the Secretary of Education to waive or modify the terms of student loans in connection with a national emergency. So this ties specifically to the COVID-19 pandemic because the Biden administration in court is arguing we are still in the middle of a COVID national emergency. But the president has said rhetorically the pandemic is over. We have rescinded, as I understand it, Title 42, what was happening down at the border. We were using COVID as a pretext to expel migrants. We have a new, effectively, remain in Mexico policy that is in effect. So in many legal grounds, Ryan, from eviction moratoriums to the border, the Biden administration is no longer trying to argue that COVID is a national emergency. But in the case of student loan relief, they are saying it's a national emergency. And I saw the Secretary of Education this morning on television was asked, are you really saying that it's a national emergency in court and not a national emergency to the American people? And he said, yes, that's what we were saying. I said, well, that's going to be interesting before the court.
They also have an add-on argument, which I think is fair,
right?
Which says that the student loan crisis was badly exacerbated by the pandemic. So even if you stipulate that legally and actually the pandemic is over. Let's just stipulate for the argument's sake. The crisis still happened because of that, and the law allows us to respond to a crisis that happened during that time. And because of the pause, and because of the pause in loan repayments, and because of the economic shock that came from the pandemic, so many people losing their jobs, that you could say that there are many people who desperately need this. And I think that's actually true. I don't think that that's kind of playing games with stuff because you have so many people who are now used to not making that $300 to $600 payment.
Right, which they kept extending and extending for like 25 months.
Their balance, if they had continued paying over the last 3 years, would be substantially lower, even though they got a pause on interest rates, than it is now. So now, all of a sudden, if the court rules, with these angry borrowers, you now are going to all of a sudden have to start paying this money. Now, I actually don't think they will. I think Biden would just keep indefinitely pausing it for everybody, which is hilarious. Like, wait a minute. So you can't cancel $10,000.
But you can extend it.
But you can basically cancel all of it forever. Okay, that's weird. So I think that making that case that, look, this was a crisis created by the pandemic should allow you to use the law around the pandemic. So if I were, and I've heard them make versions of that argument. We'll see. It's going to be this morning.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, just a couple of hours from where we're actually not that far from where we're filming right now. And one of the things that the justices are expected to focus on, a couple of things. Number one is whether the states and the borrowers even have a right to sue over the plan in the first place. This is called standing. If they don't, then they can just say, you don't have standing to sue for us before the Supreme Court, so ergo, the decision stands and the plan can go ahead. The other thing, what they have to prove is that the states and the borrowers have to show that they are financially harmed by the plan. I mean, mean, on the borrower's part, that's not hard to imagine, but on the state's parts that are joining the suit, that might be. And then otherwise, they're also going to question exactly whether the HEROES Act even gives a Biden admin the power to enact the plan. Now, look, a lot of this is partisan too. And I would say, based on from what people I've talked to, Kavanaugh is going to be one of the swinger votes. And that's why, because if we go back to the original eviction moratorium was challenged before the Supreme Court. Kavanaugh said, look, legally, I don't think you guys have standing. I don't think you guys have a foot to stand on. That said, from what I have looked at, we still have a COVID emergency. Right. I don't want to kick people out of their homes. So I'm going to punt it to you. Congress, you have 60 days to extend the eviction moratorium. The Biden administration doesn't do it. Congress doesn't do it. And then it ends up before the Supreme Court again. He's like, look, I told you had 60 days. You don't have 60 days anymore. And this came all the way down to the National Emergency Declaration. So one of the reasons why I think it will be very important and likely, it's very likely to get struck down at the court, possibly not even just 6-3. It could even be 7-2, from what I understand, is the student loan one. This specifically is going to rest on the National Emergency Declaration and the ability to use the HEROES Act with COVID as a pretext. And irony is, Ryan, as I understand it, they had a much easier way to cancel all this debt. Nobody asked them to go through with the HEROES Act. There's no reason why they had to. And it's probably the most legally precarious out of all of them that they chose.
Right. Yeah. They could have used the Higher Education Act, which has some provisions that give the Education Department a lot more flexibility, which is what Trump used, in the very early stages to pause this before they before they amended the HEROES legislation. So one possibility could be that the Supreme Court could use the Higher Education Act to legalize it.
Yes.
You don't have to rely on the reasoning of the litigants in your ruling. You're the Supreme Court. You can supremely do whatever you want. John Roberts showed that with the Affordable Care Act. Remember, they said this is a mandate. They said, well, you can't do a mandate. And Roberts said, well, actually, it's not a mandate, it's a tax.
Yeah.
And so he rewrote the reasoning for the law to then legalize it constitutionally.
Yes.
And so they could do that. And so it'll be interesting to watch to see if the Solicitor General for the White House says, even if you don't believe any of this HEROES Act justification, but you want to protect this, here's another argument that you could use if you chose to. I also think the standing is interesting, but it's shot through with a lot of politics. It's hard to see how these students are being harmed because they're paying no matter what. Like, not being part of a program is definitely not harm.
Yeah.
And so it may be sad. I feel bad that you didn't qualify for this thing. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't make you worse off than you currently are.
I'm not sure, because the problem is that there were all these suits, and the one suit that clearly people being harmed are who? Debt servicers. Those are the people they're people who literally are payment collectors. They are materially being harmed. They actually could argue that. As I understand it, that case didn't end up moving forward. The challengers thought that this would be the best way to strike it down.
Not the most sympathetic.
Not the most sympathetic, certainly. That said, from what I have heard, I could be completely wrong. Some of the court watchers I know, they think this is a clean sweep at court and that this thing is going to be struck down. And the real reason that's a mess is if they've already distributed $16 million or 16 million people relief, I don't know how you claw that back. I
think you just pause it again.
That is an administrative nightmare to literally claw back people's relief after they've already given it out the door. Just get ready for some of the worst government stories of all time.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.